Now, before I close, I want to warn the American people who are watching at home. You may hear lies and smears in this hearing that'll challenge my loyalty to and my love for our country. Those who oppose my nomination imply that I am loyal to something or someone other than God, my own conscience, and the Constitution of the United States, accusing me of being Trump's puppet, Putin's puppet, Assad's puppet, a guru's puppet, Modi's puppet, not recognizing the absurdity of simultaneously being the puppet of 5 different puppet masters. The same tactic was used against President Trump and failed. The American people elected President Trump with a decisive victory and mandate for change. The fact is, what truly unsettles my political opponents is I refuse to be their puppet.
Ms. Gabbard, if confirmed, you'll be entrusted with our nation's most important secrets. We're all entrusted with that information to serve the American people and to keep our country safe. Unfortunately, as you said in your opening statement, we've seen too many instances in recent years of people who were trusted with classified information and went on to abuse and politicize that trust. For example, in October 2020, more than 50 former intelligence officers, many of whom still held a top secret clearance, wrote a letter invoking their credentials to make false claims about Hunter Biden's laptop, likely being Russian disinformation. Do you agree that this was an example of intelligence professionals abusing and politicizing their past positions and credentials?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I do, and it is an example of what needs to end and why the American people elected President Trump to bring about those necessary reforms.
Thank you. Will you commit that no one who abuses his past position and credentials in this fashion will hold a security clearance in the future?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I want to be fair to my Democratic colleagues. Such abuses aren't just a problem on the left. Also in 2020, President Trump's former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, published a book in which he revealed sensitive conversations with the president on national security matters, including highly classified information. He didn't submit this book for review and approval to ensure that our national security secrets were protected. Do you agree that John Bolton's actions likewise undermined public trust?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Will you?
And these are your quotes. Brave, please join my bipartisan legislation calling for charges to be dropped against him. Do you disagree that legislation was not appropriate? Do you believe he is brave or not?
Yeah,
Back those words?
once again, Senator, Edward Snowden broke the law. He
Ms. Gabbard,
also
I'm not
released
talking-
information
we agree that Edward Snowden
that
broke the
exposed
law.
the United States
Asking you a
government's
question whether
illegal
your
programs.
legislation and your words are still your beliefs. Yes or no, please.
I'm making myself very clear. Edward Snowden broke the law. He released information about the United States government's
I've got other issues
illegal
to raise.
activities.
Ma'am,
If I may just finish my thoughts, Senator. In this role that I've been nominated for, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, I will be responsible for protecting our nation's secrets, and I have 4 immediate steps that I would take to prevent another Snowden-like leak.
Edward Snowden does stand out as having done particularly grave harm to our national security by revealing top secret information, including sensitive sources and methods, thus jeopardizing agents in the field. So let me ask you a question. If confirmed, would you support or recommend a pardon or any kind of clemency for Edward Snowden?
Thank you for the question, Senator Collins. If confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, my responsibility would be to ensure the security of our nation's secrets and would not take actions to advocate for any actions related to Snowden.
While you were in Congress, you introduced legislation prohibiting the government from mandating that Americans' phones or apps include mechanisms to allow the government to bypass encryption or other privacy technology. In your written responses to the committee questions, you reconfirmed your opposition to these mandates. Is that still your position?
Yes, these back doors lead down a dangerous path that can undermine Americans' Fourth Amendment rights and civil liberties.
You are being very helpful by moving so quickly.
Do you believe that the President of the United States should get all of the lawfully collected intelligence that's available in order to inform his judgments as Commander-in-Chief?
Senator, not only is the answer a strong yes, I would say that it is the Director of National Intelligence responsibility to make sure that the President has access to all the intelligence so that he can make the best informed decisions for our country.
And you will be the one actually briefing him on a daily basis, correct?
That's correct.
You traveled to Syria and Lebanon in January 2017. Bassam Kawam personally paid for that trip, and Bassam and his brother Ilyas accompanied you to both Lebanon and Syria. The Kawam brothers have links to the Syrian Social Nationalist Party, an ally of Hezbollah. And in fact, in 2008, the Syrian Social Nationalist Party participated in the assassination of a former Lebanese prime minister and assisted Hezbollah in Beirut. When did you become aware of the links between the Kawam brothers and the Syrian Social Nationalist Party?
Senator, thank you for your question. Just a point of clarification. I paid for my own expenses and travel on that trip. I was not aware of any accusations of these two Lebanese Americans associations until after the trip occurred.
And that's when you reimbursed?
Correct.
Because
Correct.
originally-
Not because of, I wanted to make sure that there were no perceived conflicts of interest. I addressed this specific question to these Lebanese Americans who had organized the trip, and they vehemently denied any associations with that group.
There is not a great deal in the public record about what you and Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad discussed for so long in January of 2017. And I think there's a great deal of interest from the American people about what was discussed in that meeting. So what did you talk about? And did you press Assad on things like his use of chemical weapons, systematic torture, and the killing of so many Syrians?
Yes, Senator. Upon returning from this trip, I met with people like then Leader Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer, talked to them and answered their questions about the trip. And quite frankly, I was surprised that there was no one from the intelligence community or the State Department who reached out or showed any interest whatsoever in my takeaways from that trip. I would have been very happy to have a conversation and give them a back brief. I went with former Congressman Dennis Kucinich, who had been there many times before and who had met with Assad before. A number of topics were covered and discussed, and to directly answer your question, yes, I asked him tough questions about his own regime's actions, the use of chemical weapons and the brutal tactics that were being used against his own people.
Were you able to extract any concessions from President Assad?
No, and I didn't expect to, but I felt these issues were important to address.
When you talk about Russia, what are your fears or policy priorities beyond ending the war? How do you see Russia as a threat to the United States?
Senator, if confirmed as the Director of National Intelligence, it will be paramount for me to assess where our intelligence gaps may exist so that I can provide the President and all of you with the most accurate full picture of that threat assessment to directly answer your questions. I think that it is a complex environment. Russia remains a strategic competitor. There are a number of concerns that have to do with their nuclear weapons, as well as how the decisions and policies that are being made by this body and by the President will impact our own national security, which is my foremost concern.
I noted that Edward Snowden was in Hawaii, of all places, for a year and a half before he fled to Hong Kong and then on to Russia. Did you ever meet him or have any contact with him during that period, or subsequently with telephone calls, emails, Zooms, contact with he or his lawyers?
No, Senator, not at any time have I had contact with Edward Snowden.
Well, the bipartisan committee report, the first item, Edward Snowden perpetrated the largest and most damaging public release of classified information in U.S. intelligence history. Goes on to say Snowden caused tremendous damage to national security, and the vast majority of the documents he stole have nothing to do with programs impacting individual privacy. But you don't recall ever seeing the work of that committee.
I'm aware of those conclusions drawn.
You're aware
Edward
now.
Snowden.
Were you aware at the time?
Yes, I was, Senator. Edward Snowden broke the law. There's no question about that. He should not have released all of that information that caused that harm. There's no question about that.
How many documents did he release?
I know that he took over 1 million documents. I don't know specifically how many of those million he specifically released.
Well, you stated very unequivocally today, Snowden broke the law, but you introduced a bill in Congress along with Congressman Matt Gaetz to essentially pardon him. So he broke the law, but it wasn't all that serious? Is that what you thought in 2020?
I take very seriously upholding our Constitution and have sworn an oath to support and defend that Constitution over 8 times in my life. My statements in the past have been reflective of the egregious and illegal programs that were exposed in that leak.
So was Edward Snowden a traitor?
Senator, my heart is with my commitment to our Constitution and our nation's security.
Ours too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have shown throughout my almost 22 years of service in the military, as well as my time in Congress, how seriously I take the privilege of having access to classified information and our nation's secrets. And that's why I'm committed, if confirmed as Director of National Intelligence, to join you in making sure that there is no future Snowden-type leak. And I would do so by taking 4 specific actions. Number 1, again, to make sure that there are no illegal and unconstitutional programs, limiting in a big way those who have access to our nation's top secrets through security clearance reform, making sure that every single person in the workforce knows about the legal whistleblower channels available to them, and making sure that there's a direct line available to me should anyone have concerns. If people choose to step outside of those legal channels to raise any concerns about programs or actions that exist within the intelligence community that are classified, there will be no excuse to do so, and they should be charged and prosecuted under the law.
That the U.S. and NATO are waging via their proxy in Ukraine didn't begin when Putin invaded Ukraine. They had their eyes set on this objective long before that. Did you say that, yes or no?
I believe you're reading my tweet.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot
the answer
more.
is yes.
You're quoting a podcast that provided much more
I'm happy to have a conversation
context.
with the chairman about whether I'm taking anything out of context. I don't think I am. And your answer is yes. Are you aware that your comments about proxy wars and Russia's legitimate security concerns, to quote your own words, are in alignment with what the Russians have said to justify their invasion of Ukraine? Yes or
Senator,
no?
I don't pay attention to Russian propaganda.
So I'll take
My
that as
goal is to
I'll
speak
take
the
that as
truth,
the answer is no.
regardless of whether
Thank
you like it or not.
I'll take it. That's fine. You said you are used to speaking truth to power.
Yes.
I'm shocked to hear you now say that, you know, you are agreeing. I'm not shocked because I know you said it. You are agreeing that you basically said that Putin was justified in rolling over the peaceful border of Ukraine, the first time since World War II that a free nation had been invaded by a totalitarian state. And you were there at 11:30 p.m. that night to say that you were with them, not us. And let me tell you something. You say you don't know because you don't read Russian propaganda. Russian state TV then aired your comments. Did you know that?
Senator, I think you should also quote the statement that I made criticizing Putin for his invasion of Ukraine.
What I would say, Mr. Chairman, with the last, it's up to all of us. We're the Senate. We get to decide whether we're going to confirm this nominee. Obviously, we didn't select this nominee. But can't we do better than somebody who doesn't believe in 702? Can't we believe that somebody who can't answer whether Snowden was a traitor 5 times today, who made excuses for Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, the first time that I'm aware of any American official has done that? I'm questioning her judgment. That's the issue that's at stake here. And as you said, and I totally agree, this is about our intelligence officers. And you cannot most of what we do here is in secret. This is one of the very few opportunities that you will ever have to have a conversation with this panel in public. And the record is going to be very clear about the position you took with regard to Edward Snowden, and the record is going to be very clear about your reaffirmation of the statements you made in the middle of the night when Russia was invading the free country of Ukraine. And I hope we will take that in consideration when we have this vote.
Your time has expired.
Relevant to China are concerning because I don't think it fully appreciates China's perspective towards the United States. For example, with regard to TikTok. Your past statements have essentially said that requiring domestic ownership of TikTok is a violation of civil liberties, and the national security concerns are complete BS. Can you explain why you have this view on TikTok?
The position that I previously made, obviously not as a member of Congress, as you consider the TikTok legislation, were centered around the protection of Americans' First Amendment rights and the lack of data privacy legislation, frankly, that would apply to TikTok, Facebook, X, all of these different social media applications that collect on us as users of these applications. There were other provisions within that legislation that granted very vague and grandiose authorities to the president on deciding which private companies are or are not a national security threat.
I want to discuss such an assessment made by the IC. For years, the U.S. analyzed evidence of numerous chemical weapons attacks in Syria. Eventually, we were able to assess that Bashar al-Assad was responsible for a number of these attacks that slaughtered his own civilians. Do you accept the conclusion broadly that Assad used chemical weapons against Syrians?
Yes, and I'm on the record for years of agreeing with that broad assessment.
Thank you. Among the attacks the U.S. assessed Assad was responsible for 2 that occurred in Douma and Khan Sheikhoun in Syria. As a member of Congress and as a presidential candidate, and as recently as this month, in your written responses to this committee, you have cast doubt on the assessment that Assad is culpable in these 2 attacks. Is that still your position?
Senator, I raised those questions given conflicting information and evidence that was presented at that time.
Okay.
Colonel Gabbard, I was a member of the House of Representatives on 9/11, 2001. As a matter of fact, I was at the Pentagon that very morning when the attacks happened. Where were you when 9/11? We all remember where we were.
Yes, I was in Hawaii. There was a 5 or 6 hour time difference. And so when I woke up that morning, it was several hours. And I remember the first thing I saw in waking up was that horrific footage of those airplanes attacking the Twin Towers in New York City.
And I think you obviously have read a lot about it during the 24 plus years since that, and most Americans have. There's a general consensus that there was a massive intelligence failure that's caught us all by surprise, even though the World Trade Center had been attacked earlier. Do you think stovepiping was a problem in our intelligence failure?
There's no question about it, Senator.
Oh, okay. Well, based on your reading, okay. Could you elaborate just a little?
Yes, absolutely, Senator. When we looked back at the post 9/11 reporting and the post assessments that were made, it was very clear that there was stovepiping of information and intelligence that occurred at many levels, at the highest but also at the lowest levels, where information that was collected by the FBI, information that was collected by the CIA was not being shared. There was almost ships passing in the night, where if there was an integration of those intelligence elements and information being shared, it is highly likely that that horrific attack could have been prevented.